Well, it's just after 7. First, thanks so much for everybody that trundled through the traffic and fought the COVID Delta variant to get here. We're honored to have you in person, and for those of you that are online, if you would mute your microphone, I would be grateful. Otherwise, Tom will mute you anyway. Well, we've got a very interesting agenda today, and I'm grateful for our 2 speakers that have taken time to come out and tell us about critical race theory and about election integrity. And we're going to tell you a little bit about convention of states and how convention of states will address these problems. But before we get into our agenda, let's go to the next slide, please. I'd ask you to join me in just a moment of silent prayer for our nation, for the citizens and Afghan patriots that are stuck in Afghanistan, and for others who have been suffering as well. So please, just a moment of silence, and then you can throw in anything that you want to pray for. Okay, thank you so much. Next slide. We always pledge the allegiance to the flag of the United States, so please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. You can actually follow the words along with luck, but I think you all know it.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible,
with liberty and
justice for all.
There you go. He said it with more could I ask all of the veterans to please just raise your hand? Thank you so much. I'm so proud that the veterans are such an active part of our activist community. Now, I'd like to turn it over to my partner in crime and co-host, Kimberly Serta, who's a district captain for House District 37, and whose idea this town hall series is in complete, if it's good, it's hers. If it's bad, it's hers. Kimberly.
I just wanted to introduce everyone. I was pretty involved in inviting people here, so I know who said they were coming. So thank you for coming. We welcome you and thank you for coming. This town hall is hosted by the Convention of States Northern Virginia North Regional District, and we lead 8 House districts in the area, and it's led by our regional captain, Harry Herchert, who will be talking to us in a few minutes. But I wanted to acknowledge the leaders in our district who are here. So when I call your name, if you would stand up and say what area you actually live in or lead. So Harry is the regional captain for the area, but he's also the acting district captain of House District 39 and 53. Harry, where are those districts?
House District 39 is Vivian Watts, the delegate, and that's in Fairfax area, just in Annandale. Sometimes we have some very weird districts. It's hard to say where it is. The other one is House District 53, which is Mark Mark Simon, which is Falls Church area, I think, and so forth around there.
So if you live in either of those districts, we would ask you to consider becoming the leader for the district because Harry's the acting district captain for those, and we're all looking for leadership to represent every district. And then Ron Stasinski is district captain HD 35. Ron, where is that? Vienna McLean. Thank you, Ron. And Tom Black, district captain HD 36.
HD 36 is a little part of Vienna Crest near the Toll Road and Hunterville Road, but mostly in Presler.
Okay, and I'm Kimberly Serta. I'm the district captain for House District 37, and that's Fairfax City where we are now, and up through Centerville, and includes George Mason University. And then Tina Price is district captain for House District 38. And then our host, Jeff Fuller, is district captain for HD 40. What area is that, Jeff?
House District 40 goes from Haymarket, where I live, kind of south of Fairfax, part of Fairfax, and then into almost the Wicked. So it's like a long donut shape.
Right.
Gerrymander thing. It's presently represented by Dan Elmer, a progressive West Pointer, I'm sorry to say. And right. And his competitor, the guy that's running against him, is Harold Pion. Harold Pion, his first act almost as a candidate was to sign our petition and tell us that he was all in. He'd run a point for us on our petition. So he's our guy.
Thank you. And then Dave Williams, district captain for House District 41. You can hear. I know. Oh. And thank you, Dave. And then Marina Tucker is here. She's a district captain team for HD 40, but yeah. Senator Martin. Yeah. Yeah. Welcome. And then I'd like to introduce the volunteer. Oh, and I don't know if Renee Camp is here. She was a recent district captain out of, okay. She was thinking she was going to come from Leesburg. And I don't know, are there any other district captains here or online? Sure. I'm going to introduce Tom, not to worry, but thank you. Yes, we're going to introduce Tom. I'd like to introduce our volunteers. Tom Turner, he's sitting here manning the computers. He's our state information analyst. Kathleen Walker, an amazing activist. She's one of our volunteers. Bonnie Aitken. Bonnie's one of our volunteers. Damian Lundquist, who just came in. Hi, Damian. Nice to see you. Where do you live? Because you're out of area. He's in Loudon. He came all the way here from Loudon. And I don't know if Nona Farber is here. Okay. Well, thank you for your time tonight. I really appreciate you helping us out. And then I'd like to introduce the candidates that are in the audience, and if there are any online. Kenny Mativer, this is HD 37. This is his district. Go, Kenny. Thank you for coming, Kenny Mativer. I'm going to get it right, I promise. Right here, Fairfax City, George Mason University, Centerville. Then Tom Pafford is here. Thank you for coming. He's HD 38. He's running for And Tom, remind us where that is. It's Annandale and yeah, thank you so much. Julie Perry was going to try to come. She's a delegate for House District 36 or 86 out in sort of Herndon. And then online, I'm not sure. Kevin McGrath was going to come. So I don't know if there's anybody online that we can. He can't make it. Okay. Well, thank you very much. Well, thank you for stepping up and running for office and for representing us. And should you get elected, which I hope you do, we'd appreciate your supporting a Convention of States resolution. And I'll hand the mic over to Jeff.
Next slide. Harry. Okay. Our regional captain, Harry Herchert, who we refer to as the Big Cheese. And you can tell he's the regional captain because he's got a jacket on.
Good evening, everybody, and thanks for coming. In Northern Virginia, we're pretty much organized within 4 regions. And I'm helping out with region number 2, which is Nova North. We've got 11 regions within the state. We've got about 67,000 supporters statewide. And you can see the rest of it here. A telepatriot caller is a person that volunteers to help us on special events to call people and ask them to do whatever we're asking. So get out, we can do get out the vote, or we can say, please come to this COS event and so forth and so on. So, and in Nova, ourselves, the 4 regions of Nova, we've got over 14,000 supporters right now. Next. Oh, and here is some, in the 2020 election, we got a significant bump up of people getting interested in Convention of States. Next. We think we got a solution as big as a problem. We're using the Constitution to save the Constitution. If everybody remembers their Constitution, it's Article 5 allows for amendments to the Constitution. And when you hear Convention of States, if you're against it, you'll talk about it's going to replace the Constitution. It's what they call a congressional convention. We are not that. We are talking about making amendments to the Constitution. And it's in accordance with the Constitutions, the way the founders set up how the Constitution can stay with the times. However, over the 200 years or so, especially in the last 120 years or so, it's been modified by a death of 1,000 cuts. So it's time to really sit back, contemplate what's going on, and try to come up with how we can patch up the Constitution. Clauses like the welfare clause, the general welfare clause, and other clauses that are in there have been manipulated, if you will, throughout the couple of centuries, and also the courts have modified their way around some of these things. The necessary and proper clause is another one that's been abused. We need your help. Constituency is everything. So if I go and talk to a delegate that I'm not the constituent of, if I don't have somebody with me that is a constituent, then the delegates are the legislator tends to just fade off and say, okay, thank you very much. I got to get back to what my constituents are worried about. So we need everybody to jump in and help us as much as possible. Thomas Jefferson thought about this a long time ago. The Constitution started getting amended by the status quo and by things that were going on very early on. And here's a quote from his Kentucky resolutions, where they were going up against a bill, the Alien Petition Act. He felt that the state should stand up. And basically that's what we're talking about. The states, this is a federalism. We are a federalism system. That means the states generated and made the Constitution and the federal government, not reverse. The states can have to start getting control of what they need to do and start to push back on the federal system. The checks and balances haven't worked out when all of them are in agreement that a certain thing should happen to have, and the judicial only need 5 votes to be on your side to make things happen the way the founders didn't want them to happen. All right, now, one of the things, if you take out your little constitution that you might recognize, okay, these are passed out quite a bit. When most people talk about the Constitution, this is what they think about. However, due to the modifications and the court decisions and things along the way, this is what the Constitution, this is the operational Constitution right here. And that is the 2012 edition. They haven't kept up, they haven't modified it. So somewhere out there, maybe in the digital world, some of the other things that'll make it this thing. All right. So we'll be going into more detail about the Convention of States later on, but I hope you'll enjoy the rest of the session with our guest speakers. Jeff?
Okay, I'd like to I'm so pleased to introduce somebody I call my friend now, Elizabeth Schultz. I've run into her at a number of different activist sessions where various folks are getting together, discussing and arguing about critical race theory. She's a pioneer, and she's one of the leaders of the fight against critical race theory in Fairfax. So please join me in welcoming Elizabeth. You want to hold it? Sure. Sure.
I'm really good at multitasking, being a mother of 4 boys, but you know, if I don't have to, tonight's a night off. So I think just before I got here, I was sitting right outside there at the light, and I got a text from Jeff. It said, "Are you on track?" And I said, "I'm at the light." And as I was turning, I realized that I made a mistake, and I didn't follow the UPS rules. Does anybody know what the UPS rule is? Always go right. Always go right. So I made my mistake. It took me too long to get here. I ran into all kinds of, hurdles. It delayed me. It took me off my task because I went left. Don't go left, go right. So I found Harry's lead-in very interesting. And in my head, I was making some corollary of what has happened with the Constitution and the inverse organization chart. That the courts, activist courts, have taken the Constitution this size and turned it into something this size by failure of lower courts to do what was proper, and ultimately the failure of the Supreme Court to do what was proper. And that's why we are where we are. But that same problem is repeated through all of our state legislatures. It is particularly repeated at our local school boards. School boards school board members make up the largest body of elected officials in this country. There are 95,000 school board members in this country, 95% of whom are elected. And nobody pays attention to them. Nobody knows who they are. They don't go to the polls on these low-hanging fruits and figure out who these people are who are probably going to spend the outsized portion of your tax dollars in any given jurisdiction in the country, not just in Fairfax, not just in Loudoun. You can pick a jurisdiction in this country, and where does the money go? Whether the individual school board has the ability to levy taxes or not, or it gets transferred like it is here by the Board of Supervisors, we're handing over hundreds of billions of dollars in state after state to these local school boards, and we're not paying attention. The problem is that what we are experiencing, this is the gift of COVID. What we're experiencing is the pulling back of the curtain, you know, on Wizard of Oz, is that parents, grandparents, godparents, aunts and uncles have figured out what is happening in the US education system because of COVID, because they were able to see, able to experience. It was revealed to them what is happening with the 51 million children who are in public K through 12 education. It was failures of school boards to act affirmatively and transparently to keep schools open. It was a failure of school systems to respond to the needs of students. And it was not a failure, but a happy incidence that what we saw that was being taught in a way that didn't align with many people's values, not just people who consider themselves conservative or Republican, not even people who consider themselves Democrat. There were common sense issues that people understood in their gut that something is wrong. Much of this has manifested in the area that, you know, we're hearing is critical race theory. In Virginia, I wrote an article for the Fairfax Times. If you haven't read it, you can just use your DuckDuckGo. Don't use the other one. Use your DuckDuckGo or whatever search engine doesn't use big tech to spy on you, and look up Yes, Virginia. There's critical race theory in our schools. Of course, it's a play on Yes, Virginia. There's Santa Claus, but the objective there was to show in real time how Fairfax County Public School staff have been crafting for years the rewriting of curriculum. And they start here, they work with like-minded colleagues in other jurisdictions like, believe it or not, Albemarle County, Loudoun County, Prince William County, and it was like an infection, it spread. And the reason it spread is because, one, nobody was paying attention to school board races and asking what was going on. And two, you have had 4 decades us leaving education to increasingly radical leftists. We took our eye off the ball. If our own children were in public school, we figured, well, my kids will be fine. I am their Boy Scout leader. I am their Girl Scout leader. I am their coach. I teach religious ed myself, you know, that my kids are going to church or synagogue. They are going to be okay. As that was happening, there was a culture shift going on around us that we had our horse blinders onto. And we started hearing stories really that started at the college level, as, you know, this campus craziness, is these terrible things that were happening on college campuses. But I can assure you that children do not step onto a college campus, you know, quad, or step into a building and become instantly radicalized, not by progressives. Don't use the word progressive. They aren't progressive. By a radical leftist professor. They are prepared and nurtured for 13 years in public education. I hate to tell you, oftentimes in Catholic education, oftentimes in private education. There is no part of the education system in this country that is now immune to this, because this is a life cycle. Those who are becoming educated to be educators are where? They're on college campuses. They are being taught and infused with this radical Marxist ideology. And then they, even if they're not, even if they're in a good school of education, they land into a school district where you have a school board who believes in it, a superintendent who believes in it, the senior staff of the entire organization who believe in it, or it could be all the way down at a department chair of an individual school who gets charged over the summer with reviewing and rewriting curriculum. And who is paying attention to the curriculum that is getting delivered to the students? And I give you an example. I had a expose written in the Daily Wire about a week and a half ago, where I highlighted school districts around the country, even state boards of education, on critical race theory. And one of the documents that was leaked to me, and I'll leave this here for people to see, was something called the Equity and Cultural Responsiveness Toolkit. So first we're in the train the trainer mode. Remember I said this is a life cycle of education. First they graduate, then they get into a school system. Well, then you have, the pedagogical or method of teaching training, the professional development of the people once they're in. The indoctrination continues. The re-education of not just teachers, school psychologists, bus drivers, everybody is indoctrinated through these practices. And I found particularly interesting that they went ahead and in black and white listed the definition of the difference. What is the difference between equity and equality? Because equity is their key word. Equity has replaced meritocracy. Equity has replaced academic excellence. If you watch a school board meeting now, you're not going to hear a discussion about, how students progress, how many students are doing well. You hear a discussion about equity. And in fact, the Virginia Department of Education held an Ed Equity Summit this summer. They released a document. If you have not seen that document, have you published that document, the Ed Equity Summit document? We'll make sure that he gets that. If you have ever seen a bigger bunch of garbage word salad in your life, driven towards only discussing equity, and that is the only thing that matters. But this is why it's important. And pardon me, I don't typically read, but equality first. They first define equality. Equal treatment or inputs in the name of fairness involves treating all people alike without acknowledging differences in age, gender, language, or ability. That sounds perfectly reasonable, right? Except the definition goes on. Though considered by some to be fair, that's where you have the gut check, you feel it coming, right? It is in fact culturally blind and often results in very unfair and unequal outcomes. So they have just done a very fascinating thing that the left does. They have just told you that equality is unequal. It's unequal because it's culturally blind. So then they go on and they say, this is equity. Now, everything is about equity. This is the outcome of practices that result in the same outcomes for members of a group. Equitable programs may make accommodations for differences so that the outcomes are the same for all individuals. What is that? That is Marxism. That is Marxism in black and white to perpetuate the lie, and this is a lie, this is an evil lie, that all children in public education can have an equitable outcome by their definition, that everybody will be the same, denies, first of all, denies the nature of God. We are not all the same. We are not all given the same gifts. We do not all have the same abilities. We do not all apply ourselves the same way. We are not all interested the same way. It denies somebody who is gifted in, I don't know, mathematics and engineering. Who is going to solve the state's problems? Who is going to solve the nation's problems? Who's going to become our next national security experts? Who's going to solve global issues? Who's going to solve, I don't know, cyber hacks on our oil pipelines? Who's going to solve energy issues? If we do not acknowledge the fact that people have differences, who's going to become a doctor? Why would you become a doctor if you are guaranteed to have the exact same outcome as somebody who does not have the gifts to become a doctor? You are seeing the lopping off of meritocracy as something that is objectively good. You saw it when we saw the reboundary of the admissions process to Thomas Jefferson High School for Science and Technology. The #1 high school in the United States of America no longer has an admissions test. How do you determine who has the ability to go to the #1 high school in the United States of America if you don't have an admissions test? Well, they do it based on a lottery because that is equitable. You get to the same outcome and you change the nature of that school, not to make that school better, but to ultimately make that school worse. So that's on the academic side. What's very curious is something that was just brought to my attention just today. So I haven't talked about this and I haven't written an article about this, but this is the African American Superintendent's Advisory Council for the Virginia Department of Education. They released a report this summer. One of the fascinating things that they talk about is how to get to equitable education and what their recommendations are. And this is where, you know, I say as a reminder, because there are not a lot of people in this room, or maybe not a lot of people online who have children who are school aged. If you leave the selection of not only your local school board, your House of Delegates, your state senator, your governor, your attorney general, to the people who have school aged children, if that's the only thing that's important in deciding the future of education of the next generation of people, the people who are becoming radicalized and coming out of colleges and going into journalism and going into medical ethics and going into cybersecurity, if all of those people don't have your voice on how education dollars are spent, this is how your education dollars get spent, because your money goes to school, whether you have children in school at all. If you've ever had children, doesn't matter, your money goes to school. If your children are long graduated, if they went to private school, it doesn't matter. Your money is still going to school. In Fairfax County, for example, 76 to 78% of the $3.4 billion budget, let me say that again, $3.4 billion budget of just the school system is paid with local property taxes. 53% of all of the tax dollars that you pay as a Fairfax County resident get redistributed to the rest of the Commonwealth. So your money is being sent not only to these schools, but to schools across the Commonwealth. And then whoever gets elected as governor selects people like this to create something. Why isn't there just a superintendent's advisory council? Why do we have to have an African American superintendent's advisory council? Because you wind up with things like this. They have a recommendation, pardon me as I flip through, that is going to talk about how schools are boundaried. If that gives you a gut check, yes, it's coming. And I tried to say when I was on the school board representing, and by the way, I was on the Fairfax County School Board for 8 years representing the Springfield District. And then I was appointed to the US Department of Education as the Deputy Director of the Office of Educational Technology. So I have local, state, federal experience in this. And I am telling you, I'm tried to be the canary in the coal mine for a long time. And I said this while I was on the school board, that you better watch out for your school boundaries, because what is tied to your school boundary? Your what? You're not your personally, the value of your home. And if the Board of Supervisors in collusion with, notice I don't say in conjunction with, in collusion with the school board and their state legislatures, which is in the hands of people who are not progressive, but who are radical, decide that everybody should have equitable, the same outcomes, then your house should not be worth any more than anyone else's house. So they're going to do that. They're going to require that each school board adopt an equity plan that includes the establishment of equity goals. So you notice how they keep using the word equity to define equity. I don't know if you've ever seen Ibram Kendi's definition of equity and racism. Because racism uses the word racist about 3 times. But this is the thing, if you pay attention to nothing else, on how critical race theory is so deeply embedded right now. And they will lie to you and they will tell you we're not teaching it. No, they're not teaching it. There isn't a class called critical race theory in a high school. There isn't a class called critical race theory in a middle school or in a college. They don't call it critical race theory. They use words and ideas to deeply embed and infuse it in every decision they make. Reconfigure division boundaries and zoning to promote better integration and to advance equitable access for all students by amplifying best practices, issuing model guidance, and advocating for inclusive school division boundaries. They intend to reshuffle the deck because they have been in charge of education for decades. If there is a gap, an academic achievement gap, it is squarely at their feet. They have spent billions and billions and billions of dollars for the outcome that is exactly where we are right now. And we've allowed it to happen. Now they're going to say, we're going to disrupt boundaries. We're going to throw apart your values of where you decide to live, where you decide to raise your children, because it is more important that we embed equity from the State Department of Education to the Superintendent of Education, all the way to the school board, and that inverted organization chart where the superintendent seems to be in charge, telling the school board what to do, and then they tell us what they're going to do, when it is completely the opposite. We are in charge as voters. We are in charge as constituents. It is our duty, it's our obligation to understand who is getting elected to these school boards, who is getting elected into our state legislature, to understand that this is what they're doing behind the scenes. These are unelected bureaucrats. These superintendents are the employees of the school boards all across Virginia. And this is what they're doing. They're laying the groundwork for changing the face of education as if it hasn't already changed permanently, but forever. There are practical insights too at the individual student level. Students feel the pressure in the classroom to not be able to speak, to not be able to write the essay they want to write, to not read the book that they want to read. They are subjected to things like that are, even if a parent is able to get the curriculum that is delivered, they are delivered through these alternate means of study materials, like a teacher showing a YouTube video at the beginning of class. That will not appear on a syllabus. That will not appear in a textbook or any curriculum materials. And it is placing squarely the teacher and the school system between the student and the parents. This is, again, what is the objective of Marxism, is to break down the family as the primary educator of the children, to break down that role of parents directing and guiding in values and morals and being grounded in our Constitution and our foundational documents. If the school and the teacher are inserted between the student and the parent doesn't know what's being taught, they can do things like show a YouTube video that promotes that the student become an ally or an activist. Their entire goal is to culturally reshape education so that students become social justice activists, but in their viewpoint. If you don't have the correct viewpoint, then you are shunned. Students are not taking SAT tests to get into college anymore because they're doing the college admissions now based on the same process. So we're not only graduating students who are going to go into the work world right out of high school, who have been cuckolded, shaped, molded, hindered in their thought process, so that we're no longer creating critical thinkers. We have critically shaped how they think by allowing this to happen in the school systems. And all of it comes back to the authority of the individual school board. There is a tremendous amount of authority in these individual school boards. They can decide the curriculum, they can decide the superintendent, they can decide the professional development of their employees, because not only do we have a problem in the classrooms for the students, we also have a terrible problem with the fact that, for example, in Fairfax County, more teachers are not in a union than are in a union. But who speaks for them? And so all of the professional development is guided by a handful of elitists within the associations, and that drive culturally equitable practices, culturally responsive teaching. It is the exact same mindset. And so now the teachers feel bullied, the teachers feel cuckolded, the teachers are subjected to things like the equity and culturally responsive toolkit, where they're compelled to take this kind of training, where they're dividing in other jurisdictions across the country. They're doing professional development based on race. white people go here, white adjacent because you no longer have Asians go over here, black and brown go over here. This is the breakdown of a society where we are substituting what was family and religious liberty and our practices that are enshrined in the Constitution. And I laughed when I saw the Thomas Jefferson quote. Do you know how many students graduating right now couldn't read that because it was in script? If you graduate, I mean, in a way it's funny, but in a way it's very, very scary, because if we don't have people who can go to original sources and read original documents, they're already being told this is a document written by a bunch of dead white, men who are slaveholders. And so it's irrelevant. We're not creating the relevance of the value that we're grounded in the values that are enumerated in our Declaration of Independence. We live in Fairfax. How many people graduating from Fairfax County high schools know about the Fairfax Declarations? I mean, it's here. Where did they start with rewriting curriculum in Virginia? Going back to my original article, they started in 4th grade history. Why did they start in 4th grade history? Does anybody know what 4th grade history is?
What I experienced was in 4th grade, they learned about colonialism and they had Colonial Day. Well, my last year teaching, they got rid of Colonial Day.
Right, exactly. So I'm going to get to that in a question and an answer, but I'll just finish with this. 4th grade history across Virginia for all 4th grade students is Virginia history. Virginia history is the birth of our nation's history. Without Jamestown, and all these kids would get on this is the culminating field trip at the end of 4th grade, they would go to Jamestown. Without Jamestown, and they're stopping those field trips because they're too quote unquote Eurocentric, as if that's not who settled here. But without Jamestown, and then next door Yorktown, without the original settlement and without Cornwallis on his knees, we're all still subjects. And we are, in fact, right now subjects. We're subjected to tyranny. And this is our opportunity to start waking up our neighbors, those who are politically docile or politically unaffiliated, and get them to understand your money is being weaponized against you. It is embedding critical race theory. It's doing it from kindergarten books in the library. If you haven't been to a bookstore recently, I beseech you, go to Barnes & Noble right up the road. Walk around and look at the end caps. The Anti-Racist Baby, written by Ibram Kendi, is not the only one. They're populating our culture with this mindset. And the only way to begin to fight back is to begin to take back these elected seats, starting with flipping your ballot, because the people who are in charge of your money, the nexus of money and children, is the most powerful weapon that is being used against us in implementing critical race theory, not just here in Fairfax, not just in Loudoun, across the Commonwealth, and unfortunately across the country. Thank you.
Well, we've got time for a few questions. If you have them, please.
Money that they have dedicated over the next 5 years. How do we fight this? I mean, they've already spent all this money in this curriculum, and they're still pushing that money.
So I co-authored with my friend Asra Namani 2 pieces. One was for Newsweek and one was for Real Clear Education, about the contract that was written by Fairfax County. We unearthed the documents, and they've written a contract that's going to last longer than you're allowed to legally hire a superintendent in the Commonwealth. So 4.5 years. Their intention is to re-educate all employees. Currently, there are about 42 or 43,000 full-time and part-time employees in Fairfax County Public Schools alone. So their objective is to put everybody through this re-education training. So The first thing I can ask you to do is start showing up to school board meetings. They are spending your money. They are inculcating children in radical theology. And you have to tell them. You have to write letters to the editor, write to local papers, put things online, be unafraid, because there's nothing worth fighting for more than our children, because it isn't just the children. The future of our children is the future of the Commonwealth of Virginia, is the future of our nation. And the culture war is already on. The question is, what's your personal capacity to engage in it? Because you can't stay on the sidelines anymore. So, start by doing something. Everybody can't do everything, but nobody is allowed to do nothing. Yes, sir.
I'm a retired high school teacher, and when I was teaching, SOLs were big, like 5 years ago. And if the policy of the CRT is to downsize, to bring the student down, it seems like they're saying, well, we're still doing the SOLs, or are they still doing the SOLs? Because they're saying, well, you got to pass the SOLs, you got to pass the SOLs, which has the intent of, I guess, it's kind of saying, well, let's do better on the SOLs. But then we talk about like a school like Jefferson, where they're bringing them down, they're going to have a mission. So it seems counter. It seems like they would use an argument like that, or well, we're not doing that. We still have the SOLs.
So
I don't know. Do they still have
they do still have the SOLs. They've eliminated some, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, because we do overtest kids. Standards of learning. So it's basically an assessment across the state to determine it's a minimal assessment, and it really does more to talk about how the teacher's doing than actually how the student's doing. So we have bad assessments because we don't actually track how a student progresses over time. And this is the other tie-in to the boundaries. Well, two things. One, several years ago, under a McAuliffe-Northam mindset, they dropped the standards of what it means to be proficient, the score that you would need to achieve in order to be proficient. So that's basically like saying, well, you can get an 82 and still get an A. So they dropped the level because they weren't raising the bar. So they weren't making any progress. And instead, white and Asian students were still showing an achievement gap. So what do? You collapse down the top, because then there's not such a distance between the bottom and the top. The second thing is that when you change school boundaries, it's like taking a deck of cards. You just throw them all up. If they're all sorted by suit, and you throw them up in the air and then just collect them into piles, you no longer know what you have. So if you redraw the boundaries and the SOLs are based on how the school performs, if you change the population of the school, you've smudged away what the base is, and it's a terrible thing that they're embarking on. Who else? Yes, ma'am.
I have a question. Would you please explain cancel culture as it is incorporated into the CRT? And the reason I'm asking that is because last night I was riding to a choir practice with friends from down in the Fredericksburg area. And they told me, the lady told me she had a friend who was a librarian in a local school who was barred from entering the building because they were going to the library, eliminating, throwing away books that were published before 2000.
Oh, that's interesting. I would love to hear more about that. Make sure that person gets in touch with me. That's very interesting. So she said that they're throwing away books, before 2000 or earlier, because the old stuff doesn't matter. This is what you're doing. This is newspeak. This is Orwellian. Is you erase the old, you replace it with something, you change the definition that something that is equitable, it means something important when it doesn't, because it just means the same for everybody. We have to name what they're doing. Equality, having equality of opportunity is a good thing, but they've just redefined it to be, well, equality is now unequal. It's mind games. In the green sweater, yes, ma'am. I know it's a lot.
I'm not a teacher, I'm an instructional assistant. I've been in the same school for 14 years, high school, did I say that? And yes, this is deeply entrenched in my school and our department. And I work with wonderful teachers, but two teachers in particular, you know, given of value, they have just bought into this.
Mhm.
And I just am in the classroom. I don't know what I can say. You know, I can't.
So I think, so somebody asked me, I was at another event this weekend and somebody said, what one source could I go to that will, you know, take that to someone to show them that this is real? And I don't know if you're familiar with the term cognitive dissonance, but, you know, so we have people who are firmly believe something, whether they quote unquote bought into it or they truly believe it, it's of no consequence. What this will take is a drip with people like that, you know, is that you show them. And the first thing I would do is print off the Ed Equity Summit document, and I would take it to them, and just the forward alone, the way that it's written, it says absolutely nothing about children and academics and excellence and achievement. It has nothing to do with that. It is only about the race of children and somehow achieving equity amongst the races. And so if that's the State Department of Education, and you take that to a fellow educator and you say, can you please explain, look at just this one document, just this one page of this one document, read this and tell me how this makes sense, that this is something that is for the benefit of children. We are no longer student focused, we are ideology focused. And you know, that which is best for children is often inconvenient for adults. We seem to have forgotten that, but that's us who have forgotten it. And it's we who should be the voices to try to right this ship, just like you are doing with the Convention of States. You're trying to right the ship. And this is no less important, because there isn't a community in the United States, not one town, not one city, not one county, one jurisdiction that is immune to this. It may not have been fully immersed in some places like it is here, but this is here. So the question is, you know, how do you fight it? And with an individual teacher who's like, oh, we're going to be practicing equity. Let's look at that. Let's kind of just pull that apart. And, you know, I don't know if anybody diagrams sentences anymore, but just diagram a couple of sentences, you know, in one document, in one page, and see if you can start to wake. Yes. For state, it's the State Department of Education. And I'll make sure that Jeff has a copy so that he can share that with everyone. I'm happy to stay and talk to whomever. I don't know what the time. Yeah. Yes, I will stay and I will answer any questions.
And we may have time at the end for some more questions, so bear with me.
But I have a former constituent of mine who I think has some important things to share.
Yeah.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you. Let me just say, as Elizabeth wraps up there, one of the things I discovered at Prince William County School Board meeting is that they're very pleased with the fact that the governor has a Department of Education full of these critical race theory people writing these education summits and instructions and all critical race theory, and everybody's got to be equity at and these liberal progressive school boards or neo-Marxist school boards ride those coattails. They say now, well, we've got to do it because it's in the governor's guidance. We've got to do it. So what does that tell you? How important is this election? Okay, you got to get rid of that entire rat's nest in Richmond. Would you agree? Okay, I know you do. She's also working with the Youngkin campaign, oh, by the way. So, okay, if I can, I'm going to move on because I don't want to run out of airspeed and altitude, and we've got to run out of here. I want to introduce my friend, Rob Pressler. Rob is a retired Navy captain, and he's a activist. And like me, Rob got fired up when he saw the election go down the tube, or when it was stolen, in my humble opinion. So, Rob, please come up and tell us why you got inspired and what you're doing for the country, basically.
I'm going to try to keep a little bit of light over my shoulder here. So, Jeff, kind intro. Thanks a lot. And really appreciate the opportunity to come and speak to you all tonight. Elizabeth, great presentation. I mean, our country's under such a vicious attack by the left. I mean, it cannot be more evident than it is today. It's really saddening. Before I speak, I really want to introduce my better half, my bride of almost 39 years, Carol, who I describe her as a fierce but loving patriot. So you don't want to mess with Carol, but she'll give you a hug afterwards, I guess. So shamelessly, I'm going to refer to notes because it's going to keep me on task and it's going to keep me on time also. So please bear with me on that slide, please. Thank you. Nope, back one. Okay. My message tonight is that we, the people, have work to do. It's time to stop talking and start doing. That's my son's mantra. I'm stealing it from him, but I think it really helps describe what's going on today in our country. We need to get off our sofas. If we don't address the election steal, I'm afraid we've lost our republic. That's how important this fight over the 2020 election really is. And I'll offer you tonight, in the back, I've got a clipboard with some petitions here. I'll offer you a chance to join thousands of your fellow Virginians in demanding a full forensic audit in our state. Okay, thank you, thank you. So when I first met Jeff asked me, what made you get involved? And I would say that there were really three words twice over. It's the election steal and we the people. And I'll talk a little bit about each of those as we go. So in November, after the steal was evident, I got on the phone and I called our Republican Party of Virginia chair, Rich Anderson, and I said, hey, Rich, what is the Republican Party doing about the steal in Virginia? And what I heard was, now, Rob, the election's over. We need to move forward. We need to focus on 2021. We need to focus on the midterms, and we need to focus on the next 4-year election. Well, I mean, I bit my lip to not give him a string of expletives there, but totally disappointed and continue to be disappointed with our Republican Party. So it was obvious then, and it's still obvious now, the Republican Party will not save us. In January, America saw all three branches of government in our federal government that these have been overrun by those who were involved in stealing our election. It was obvious then, and it's obvious now, that our federal government will not save us. Since then, we were reminded of President Trump's inaugural address, and he said, this is not just another 4-year election. We're not simply transferring power from one administration to the other, from one political party to the other. We're taking back the power from Washington, D.C., and we're returning it to you, the American people. In 2017, I listened. I don't think I heard. So the implication of that is the people must accept the power back. Lieutenant General Flynn, I think you all would recognize him. He clarified the task ahead, and he said, If the essence of liberty is limited government, then the actions and involvement of its citizens are needed. He continued, therefore, get involved, citizens. And he continued, your actions at the local level can and will have a national impact. That's our present day call to action as I see it. And remember, we are the majority. So what happens when everyday citizens get involved in mass? We, the people, start accepting the power back. There's a Japanese saying that goes something like, each of us is but a drop of water, but together we're an ocean. It's time to make waves. So I found a group of folks in Richmond, Virginia called Integrity Alliance USA, and I aligned with them. These folks are focused on we the people, and they're focused on our rights and our responsibility to challenge our state leadership and demand a full forensic audit. Integrity Alliance is wholly grassroots. They're completely unfunded and 100% volunteer supported. It was formed and modeled after successful Arizona grassroots efforts that have since spread across the country. It's supported by 2 national forensic audit activists who've been involved in every state effort as we've undertaken these efforts going forward. Our key state legislator is Amanda Chase, Senator from Chesterfield, who holds weekly calls with groups of grassroots activists. To date, we've sent our state leadership over 3,000 notices by certified mail demanding a full forensic audit. 2 weeks ago, we delivered over 4,000 signed paper and digital petitions to the Virginia Senate floor where they were entered into the record. So far, the Republican committees of 5 Virginia counties have sent resolutions to our legislators demanding a full forensic audit. These patriots are from Campbell, Culpeper, Orange, Russell, and Suffolk counties. We should be proud. There are 8 audit-aligned senators in our legislature now. We're gaining momentum. So the way ahead, we're looking to partner with others in digital monitoring and surveillance of our coming November election. This goes back to fool me once, shame on you, fool me twice, right? We'll continue to collect petitions demanding a full forensic audit until the audit happens. We're gathering examples of 2020 fraud and are preparing to confront our state leadership with them. So I'd like to share 3 of those examples with you. Slide, please. So here are the 3 that I'm going to discuss, and there are 2 qualifiers I have to make to this, to everything that follows here. First of all, I'm not an expert in elections, voting systems. I am just like you all. I read, I try to digest and learn. My second qualifier is what I'm going to talk about here is not intended as a deep dive. We could go very, very long on each one of these slides and each one of these issues, but instead I want to expose you to them, and I'm happy to address your questions as we go forward and also share additional information with you. But I would offer trying to ferret out examples of fraud and have the discipline to make a nice tight case so that when you confront our state government, that they can't run away from it. It's quite a tall lift. Jeff and I met this last week to talk about just that. Next slide, please. I hope to review them as we go forward here. I'm going to hit each one of those going forward. So this one here, there are 24 counties in Virginia reported by Judicial Watch that have over 100% registration rate. That means that 100% means that every Virginia resident who's 18 years or older registered to vote. Do you believe that? So Loudoun County, 116%. Fairfax City, 109%. The source here is a Judicial Watch study that was released back in 3 October 2020. I had the opportunity to talk to Dr. Frank. Do you all recognize Dr. Frank, Mike Lindell fame? So I had the opportunity to talk to him a number of weeks ago, and I said, this is one of our first observations of what appears to have gone wrong in Virginia. And so his reaction was, inflated voter registration rolls are the signature modus operandi for phantom voting. Something I'd offer you also when you look at these numbers here, and also the statewide average. So you see these here, the statewide average is 95%. That's when you see these high, there aren't a lot below 95%. So that gives you a sense of what's going on in Virginia. And the national average voter registration rate across the nation, 67%. So 67%, that's believable, I think. Against 116%, against 95%. You know, I couldn't address it right now, votes received versus the registered, but the national average is 67% register, 61% of those vote. Now, I don't know what the numbers are in Fairfax. Good. I would say frankly, I don't know the political demographics of this group here, but clearly some of the high ones we know are in Northern Virginia, which is contested territory for conservatives. So registration rates, this defies logic. Next slide, please. So here, I just wanted to show you from the Judicial Watch study what their data look like. So this is just an example. It's not comprehensive. There were over 120 entries just for the state of Virginia. And down there at the very bottom in pink is the statewide that shows 95% down there. I would have, I think, 15 slides to follow in order to depict all of the various ones that were produced by Judicial Watch. But Judicial Watch provides this information to states during election cycles in an effort that the states can cleanse their voter registration rolls pre-election to gain compliance with the National Voter Registration Act. Tom Fitton, the president of Judicial Watch, and I hope you all have some familiarity with Judicial Watch, very credible organization, wonderful group of people. They do an awful lot for America. Tom Fitton said, this data indicates the recklessness of blindly mailing ballots and ballot applications to voter registration lists. Dirty voting rolls equal dirty elections. Defies logic. Next, please. Okay, so here, if you're not standing right here, you really can't see these slides. What I'm going to do is I'm going to read you the text on it, but the source is a November 2020 Twitter feed by the Virginia Project. And the reference data they have here is from the Central Absentee Precinct for Virginia, which represents the roll-up of early mail-in and absentee voting. So I'm going to read you what these slides say because this person did a wonderful job in laying this out and helping expose something that I think you will agree is highly questionable. So over here, he or she says, making an attempt to explain to the layman why this chart is so consequential. What you're looking at is batches of votes, all the dots here, in the order they were recorded, left to right. Placed high or low on the y-axis based on D or R lean. So over here, you can see there's a blue box, represents the Biden lean. The red box represents the Trump lean. Here's the first thing to understand. Batches in the red box went for Trump. Batches in the blue box went for Biden. Notice how few batches before the very end went for Biden. I hope you all can see that. I'm sorry, no. Notice how few batches before the very end went to Biden. Look at all this. Okay, let's see. Next, please. So here, I'd ask you to note the difference in appearance of the patterns on the left and the right. And I'll be referring to those as I read these slides to you. I've marked here the characteristic line data structures of central absentee precinct returns drawn out by the chart and named them. Here is A, B, C, and all three of these are D. The structures A, B, maybe C, and D are a big problem because it's discontinuous twice. Jumps to here, jumps to here. Untampered absentee returns look like Minnesota's or Florida's. They settle quickly into a straight line. Mixed mail averages out single precinct votes to produce a fairly constant value. That's kind of intuitive when you think about it. And when you see that, this looks pretty crazy. For the purpose of time, we didn't address the comparison to Wisconsin. Wisconsin had quite an anomaly that looks very much like Virginia. Next, please. I've cut the chart, this is the author here, into pre-D and post-D. Pre-D and post-D. So you can see how dramatic and immediate the change from chaotic patterns to total order was. Whole bunch of dots, whole bunch of dots. The line and D, there's no other batches out there. The only thing that came in were those that associated with D here. The structure labeled D is really important to understand. Before it shows up, Virginia's election was a crushing and overwhelming GOP victory, and D cannot be authentic. Cannot. Defies logic, doesn't it? Next, please. Oh, back, please. You know what? I honestly do not know that. I've been asked that before, and I know the answer's out there. My wife and I were deplatformed on Twitter after January 6th, so I can't go on Twitter and ask them. But I'm looking for an alternate source to get at them and try to dig into this because I have to make sure this data is clear and well understood. Ma'am? Oh, okay. The intervals 0.2. Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, okay. So these are batch number 0, 25, 50, 75, blah, blah, blah. Okay. I spent some time as a poll watcher at the Fairfax County Government Center where they were doing this very thing prior to Election Day. It was very interesting. They wouldn't let us see the scanner and the scanning of the ballots. Yes, yes.
It's how they process.
Yeah, I really can't, I don't think there's any way to break that data out without going to the state. And that's something that will be one of our questions. We need to better understand the anomalies that we can see here. Tell us what we need to know so we can understand it, ma'am.
So when you were a poll watcher, you said they wouldn't let you watch the scanning of the ballots. Isn't that illegal?
You know, I guess it gives us a judgment call. I got on the phone to my trainer and it said, this is what I observed. And after the election, I submitted an affidavit that said, this is what I saw, along with hundreds of other Virginians who did the same thing. You know, once burned, twice shy. I'm going to be a poll watcher this time around. You can bet I'm going to have a big voice this year. Was I in the CAP? Yes, yes. No, I was in the CAP for a few hours on election morning, and then I went to a precinct out on Route 1. Oh, where was I? I was at the Fairfax County Government Center. I was able to watch them opening the mail, taking the ballots out, putting them in boxes that were then carried upstairs under two-person integrity. I hope it was two-party integrity, but they were taken up then to the scanner and the ballots were scanned. That's correct. Oh, it's huge. Okay, I'm sorry. We need to step it up. Sorry. Okay, next, please.
What happened to the note you said it said you saw this? Anybody reprimanded?
You know, I think, you know, when you're in the wilderness and you call out, who hears your voice? But I think this is one reason why we need an audit. Our voice will be heard, the affidavits will be read, the evidence will be brought forward. That's it's so insidious. Okay, this is a very busy chart. I'm going to try to simplify it a little bit. This is the third issue, and the source for this information is Gateway Pundit. They produced a series of articles from January to February 2021, done by Jim Hoft. I reached out to Jim and said, I want to pick apart your data a little bit. Let's talk, please. I haven't heard back from him yet. But the data referenced is from the New York Times live feed for Virginia. Thank you for building for me. So I want to give you a scene setter for this information. At 11:03 p.m. on November 3rd, with 75% of Virginia vote in, Donald Trump led Biden 52-46. Then, during live tabulation, which you see here, there were 3 entries of over 300,000 votes for Biden, 2 of which were deleted. These large batch drops came in at 89, 79, and 80% for Biden. Previously, the state was running 52-46. These entries were subsequently attributed to Fairfax County, and the number of votes effectively reverted the Virginia lead to Biden. So here we have 3 associated vote batches, over 300,000 votes, 2 of which were deleted. We had a complete reversal of the Virginia lead as a result of this. Okay, so there are a lot of theories on what happened. Please go ahead.
And they said that Trump's votes were counted double and that they deleted, one of, the 300,000. So they said in both Democrats and Republicans agreed that this is what happened.
Okay, well, let me see if I can address it a little bit here. Over here, you'll see starting at 11:14 p.m., 47-52. Trump was in the lead. Watch this lead erode over time, switches, and now it ends up at 54.45. So over here, these dumps, and you really can't see this, I apologize for that, but here's one plus 331,000, 39,000 for Trump, minus 330,000, minus 337,000. So they put them in, they took them out. The numbers weren't quite exact, but they were damn close. Here it happens again, 308,000 votes in, 80,000 for Trump, 308,000 votes out, 80,000 votes out for Trump. And then the final dump, 308,000 in and 77,000 in for Trump. And this last one at a ratio of 80 to 20. So that was a coup de grace. Sir.
Rob, what's the rationale for the reverse? What was the rationale?
There really is none. It makes no sense at all because this is a live vote going on there. This would have required someone at a very high level to have gone in and taken the votes out and then put them back in again and take them out again and then put them back in. I think you're all over it.
They didn't get, so the first time they took away 39,000 or 37,000, it wasn't enough, 80,000, better, 77,000. So they were trying to manipulate to see how many votes he
Yeah.
needed to get.
I'm sorry.
Question online, why are there numbers to the right of the period?
Well, you know, that's another issue. Now, I can't attribute the decimal point to the New York Times feed right now. I want to talk to Jim Hoft and I want to understand, because sometimes in interpreting this, they do some manipulation of the data. So I want to make sure it's totally clean going forward. Next, please. Okay. Last substantive slide. This is again from Gateway Pundit. The data referenced is also from the New York Times live feed. Build, please. So I want to draw your attention to the blue and pink columns, which show 26 batch entries with the exact same ratio of 55% to Biden and 45% to Trump. Some of these batches in the numbers were in single digits of votes. Some of them were in thousands of votes. But they were all 55 to 45. That defies logic, doesn't it? And at the top of the chart here, the timestamp is 4 November at 0800. And at the bottom, it's 6 November at 6 p.m. Frankly, I didn't follow so closely how long the vote tabulation was being conducted, but apparently these are the numbers that they've got here. It's also interesting to note that throughout here, you know, there are little tweaks here and there, but it maintained Biden at 54% all the way down. Not suspicious. Okay, next, please. So here's our charge. And I hope you found this interesting tonight.
If Rob will stay around, we answered a number of questions, but if Rob will stick around along with Elizabeth, if we have time at the end, you'll be able to ask questions as well. Next slide. So thanks to our wonderful speakers. Okay, I want to give you a short video, and I hope you people online will be able to see this. If you have a decent connection, you probably shall. This is the story of the Convention of States. How do you do it? The process.
The United States Constitution was written to form a more perfect union that would enable checks and balances to prevent a bloody revolution from being a necessary measure to abolish tyranny. Excellent though it was, Colonel George Mason feared the national government might one day end in a tyrannical aristocracy. The rights of the people needed to be secured against potential corruption at the national level. One of the solutions the framers decided upon can be found in Article 5, which gives state legislators the authority to call a convention that bypasses federal legislators to amend the Constitution. That gives we the people the opportunity to make some long overdue structural adjustments. Maybe term limits would be a good place to start. Here's how the process works. Citizens request their state legislators to pass a bill called an application with operative language identical in each state. These legislators of the states then pass the application. Generally, only a simple majority is needed. Congress shall, by law, call a convention of the states as soon as it receives applications from 2/3 of the state legislatures. That's 34 states. Delegates chosen by the state legislatures attend the convention. Each state only gets one vote at the convention, but they can send as many delegates to represent the state as they so choose. Amendments are proposed, debated, and voted upon at the convention. Finally, ratification takes place in the states. Each amendment must be ratified by 3/4 of the states in order to become part of the U.S. Constitution. But what about a runaway convention? Let's get a reality check. Like constitutional law scholar Robert G. Nadelson says, there are far more political and legal constraints on a runaway convention than on a runaway Congress. The convention delegates, also called commissioners, are bound to the will of their state legislatures. If they don't vote as their states demand, they get recalled and might even get sent to prison. Furthermore, a full 3/4 of the state legislatures, we're talking 38 state legislatures, must ratify each and every amendment in order for it to become part of the U.S. Constitution. Even Alexander Hamilton and Abraham Lincoln, who favored national government, emphasized that Article 5 gives states authority over the national government. Hamilton writes that national rulers have no option upon the subject. The words of Article 5 are peremptory. The Congress shall call a convention. And Lincoln says the convention mode seems preferable in that it allows amendments to originate with the people themselves. Article 5 Convention of the States is a safe route to stopping federal overreach. Civilizations rise and fall. Let's be a civilization that saw the cycle of collapse coming and broke it.
Next slide. So I'm going to just speak to a couple slides, and then we have one more short video. This is, I want to outline the problem. We first had a great outline of the problem in terms of critical race theory and election integrity. Those are two big problems, and I know all of you care about them. So I'm just going to try to tie a few more perspectives on the problem. On the left, you see a slide that shows the longevity of members of Congress. What do you notice about it? It keeps going up and up and up. Up here, you see the number. This is just the top. These are the stars. The top 10 congressional elected officials who have made the most money while a member of Congress. Okay. We put an asterisk on the lady in the top left because she married a billionaire. Seemed unfair to hold that against her. Okay, the other thing I think, this is my own humble opinion, that the deep staters in Department of Justice, FBI, CIA, NSA, DOD have basically run away with a lot of our government. And right. So the bureaucracies is a problem. So what's the solution? What's that? Oh, okay. That they're going to run us off here pretty quick. So next slide. More about the problem. I think we all recognize the national debt here on the left is a huge problem. We also have problems with taxes and spending. So the fiscal constraints is an important part of the equation. Can you go back? Right here. I wanted to point this out. Convention of States did a survey of every state in the union, to determine the degree to which people found the concept of Convention of States, Article 5, attractive. As you can see, 75% of Republicans, 55% of Democrats, and 62% of non-affiliated found it attractive. In Virginia, it was 61% total. So I say that because a lot of people haven't heard about Convention of States. One of the jobs we ask of you is spread the word. Take one of those little pamphlets, take a couple, hand them out to your neighbors and friends. Next slide. So I want to talk about these issues briefly. First, we've already talked about these two important issues, critical race theory and I call it We the People Act, which is a derivative of the taking over the elections by the federal government. So we have to restrict the power and jurisdiction of the federal government to stop these things, infringement on the First and Second Amendments. Also, I'm sure near and dear to everybody's heart. Constraining the fiscal excess of the government. We have this ridiculous $1+ something trillion infrastructure bill, which is about 40% or less infrastructure. The rest of it, progressive good ideas. And then limit the terms of officials, of members of Congress and officials, as I mentioned, the deep staters. So that's what we're calling for. Next slide. Now, I'm going to tell you this is a Fullerism. Since I've been involved in this, and I called Harry up in, I think, December and said, hey, I want to do something, and he had me become a district captain. This is, go back now, I want to ease into this one. Okay, this is a way we could be, right? A lapdog. Please, Mr. Delegate, would you please agree to see us? Hey, look. It's no more Mr. Nice Guy. Next one. Okay, this is what you have to be. Next. If you're not politically feared, you will not be respected in politics. That's just the way it is. So you can be polite, but you have to be firm. And behind that voice, they need to know that you'll be coming for them if they don't go your way in ways that matter. Next slide. Okay, this is a short video I think you'll enjoy.
Joe Biden controls the White House, sort of. Really, we all know that Joe Biden's no longer in control of his faculties, and others behind the scenes actually control the agenda. Socialists control Congress. Leftists control the deep state. Marxists control our country's schools and universities, and the tech oligarchs are their willing censors and watchful spies. So who has a plan to stop them? Certainly, we're not seeing courage from Capitol Hill to stand up to the Democrats and their woke mob. The good news is that we do have a plan to stop them. This is the only plan that bypasses Biden and Congress to save the Republic. And this plan brings the fight to where we, the people, have a political advantage. While many Americans were disappointed in the outcome of this election at the presidential level, liberty-minded state legislators quietly swept to enormous victories. Now's the time to use this to our advantage and draw the fight for our liberties out of the swamp and into the battlefield where we, the people, have the advantage, in the states. This plan to call a convention of states can propose constitutional amendments that prohibit Congress from adding justices to the Supreme Court or states to the Union. This plan can secure our Second Amendment rights. It can eliminate the woke Department of Education, and it can stop the federal government from taking over the state election process. You need to know that this plan's underway already, and it's working. Join 5 million supporters and citizen activists, along with my friends Mark Levin, Rand Paul, Ben Shapiro, Glenn Beck, Mike Huckabee, Sean Hannity, and many, many more.
The Convention of States, ultimately, fundamentally, the way to secure our republic.
Washington is so broken it may not be fixable, that the only way you'll truly get reform is by having a convention where people decide, you know, we need to have term limits, or we have to have a balanced budget amendment.
I have endorsed it, and I believe very strongly that it's the only way we're ever going to get a balanced budget amendment. It's the only way we're ever going to be able to bring some real reform to our system.
I mean, I've been a longtime supporter of the Convention of States and to reestablish the sort of guiding principles of the Constitution.
You have a chance of really saving the Republic. I am all in. ConventionofStates.com.
And now I'm joining Convention of States to make this happen. So join me in this constitutional revolution at conventionofstates.com. They have a petition. Go sign it today.
Support the only plan that bypasses Biden and Congress to save the republic. Sign the petition at conventionofstates.com.
Okay, next slide, please. Okay, let me summarize. We've talked about critical race theory in education. We've talked about election integrity. What can we do? We've got to get out and vote. We got to get our neighbors out to vote. Ask others to join us in the Convention of States. If you haven't signed up, sign the petition. We have them in the back. If you are here and you're not a volunteer, and you'll know if you're a volunteer because you will have had to submit a volunteer application so that you can get access to things like COS University, our apps for writing information. For example, there's an app called, what is it? Yeah. COS Action. Well, we have an app which eludes me right now that you can write letters to the editor and contact your voter's voice. And we have another one that called Telepatriot. We mentioned the phone callers. If you volunteer, you can sit at home in the comfort of your couch and call other citizens and ask them to do things like get out and vote. Okay. So those are the things I would ask you to please do. Now, we do plan on having another town hall. We tentatively put it out there about 6 weeks out. We're not sure what it'll be. I would be grateful if you let us know whether this was a useful exercise. And for all of you online, please make a note in the chat, your opinion on how this worked for you. And I apologize for not repeating the questions. We will figure out a technical solution next time. We just couldn't make it happen so that you could hear the questioners. And whip me for not repeating the questions. I am sorry. So please do make a note of how it went for you online, whether you were able to see the video and so forth, because that's sometimes a challenge. So now I'm going to we'll break it up in just a second, but I want to finish with just a moment of silence if we could. So I just ask you to bow your head in prayer for those that have given the full measure of devotion. Thank you. I should have had you do that, Kimberly. So now, if you have any other questions of our two guests or of Harry with regard to Convention of States, please whip them on us. Yeah. Any questions on Convention of States for Harry first? Yes, sir. There is an example Convention of States that we ran a couple of years ago in Virginia that illustrates that, and you can see that online. But as I understand it, they can work them multiple any way they want, but they have to vote on them. They have to get them out of the convention and then on to the states. So the mechanics of that, it's conceivable they could have a committee over here working on one and one over there. Harry?
The amendments are brought up for debate. And debate is not something you hear about much anymore, especially in Congress. Congress is broken. They don't debate the issues. They don't take the time. It's a stack like this that comes through with everything in it. And if you have time to read that, then you're already, you're lost. So it's one state, one vote. All right. So when it comes down to here is a recommendation for an amendment, all the states will vote on it. All right. Yes. We need 34 states to have Congress make the call. Article 5 of the Constitution says Congress shall make the call if we have the right number. We've got 15 right now. with 16 and 17 pretty close. I think North Carolina is debating it. This past year, things got quite weird as far as some of the discussions. Virginia is not one of them. And that's why we need your help and put pressure on our legislators to vote yay for the resolution, which then becomes the application, and that it helps aggregate. One thing about Convention of States is that all the states that put in the resolution, it's roughly the same resolution, especially on the items to be discussed at the convention. All right. So that aggregates up, and Congress will make the call. That's right back in there.
Is there a time limit on having 34 states sign up?
It depends on the legislator. They may put a sunset clause or a thing like that in there. Missouri had one in, and they are in the throes of discussing now on taking that limit off. No, the Constitution is pretty mum on what should happen, although the founders at the time were very familiar with the conventions. And they had ways of dealing with the conventions, and everybody understood them. So there's not a lot of information in there about a convention. But if you go to our website, look at the simulation, and you'll see some of the ideas that it was only 3 days. So they were very limited what they could do, but there were representatives from each of the 50 states. And they came up with some amendments that could have been sent to the states for ratification after that. Yes, sir. Good question, and that is a no. This is strictly among legislators. The executive branches, anywhere along the line, president, governor, secretary of state, lieutenant governor do not get involved. However, the lieutenant governor could get involved if it was a tie vote in the Senate, and then they would cast that vote. Yes, ma'am. We've only had the resolution pass one house. That was the House of Delegates in 2016. All Democrats voted no, and some voted. I mean, we had a majority of Republicans that voted aye. So, but then it got just killed in the Senate. All right. Now, not every Republican voted aye. So we have a lot to do as far as convincing our legislators to vote for this resolution. And they have all kinds of concerns that you'll hear. Yes.
Is there truly enough time right now to do something before the November election coming up, or is that too short?
That's too short a time. There's going to be a vote now for our new delegates. Okay, all House members are up for a re-election, and we have some candidates that are going to be trying to knock them out of position. And these candidates may or may not support COS, so you have to check with them that if they do or not. We have one that does, and one is undecided yet. So everybody grab him and talk to him before he leaves. But anyway, the resolution will probably get drawn and sent in and put in for debate next year, which starts on the second Wednesday of the year. All right. Yes. Say again. Well, you get with you got to make sure your delegate or your senator knows that you want paper ballots. Now, I think we're going to have to take some of these discussions outside. Could we have to leave now, or?
We have to wrap up.
All right.
Thank you.
One more question.
Yeah, I promised that you could, and please do.
And there should have been tens of thousands. This were Democrats that were in prison. You can tell me in February, there would have been hundreds of thousands of people on the streets. So there is a rally that's sponsored by Look Ahead America.org. It's Matt Bringer's organization. And it's on September 18th, a Saturday, at noon in front of the US Capitol. So if you could spread this everywhere to other states, I mean, it is unconstitutional and inhumane the way these people are being treated. I'm gonna get all choked up because our terrorists were treated better in Vietnam than these Americans, and it is unacceptable. And we need to start putting our foot down and telling our government that they work for us and we will not put up with this. Because we are going to lose our country. We don't start stepping up and telling our government who is in charge. So anyway,
Thank you. And I have one thing to add. We are a nonpartisan organization. We are trying to get Democrats to help us, and we are trying to get Democrat electors and legislators to help us and to vote aye. We have not been successful especially in Northern Virginia, but we still have hope.
Okay, we have to pack it up, Kimberly. Thank you, everybody. Thanks so much for coming. And thanks, Kimberly, and thanks everybody for helping Tom. Thank you.